Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Professor Norman Cornett, curator of the exhibition The Body in Question at the Galerie ÉCLATS 521 Contemporary Art in the BELGO Building in Montreal. And I'm inviting you now to go with me on a magic carpet ride to see the wonders of the human body through the eyes and through the lenses of 8 different artists who come from around the world. The French philosopher Merleau-Ponty said, "Every perception is an interpretation." And there are as many ways to interpret the human body as there are ways to come to terms with the human condition. And that is our ideal. To grapple with what it means to be human. And we know that that means coming to terms with the human body. As curator of the exhibition, I chose the artist Lucenac for a number of reasons, not least of which is the way that she comes to terms with the condition of women. In fact, when I see this work, I'm reminded of Sarah McLachlan's breakout hit, Building a Mystery. In fact, does Lucenac impel us to realize the mystery of womanhood? Not least because she deals with the same model for over 20 years. In fact, she is documenting what happens to a woman's body over the course of time, from year to year, decade after decade. And Lucenac does this through remarkable drawings, as we see here, and they are eminently psychological. When we think of surrealism, has Lucenac here presented us a surrealistic vision of the condition of women, or here a psychological approach to how a woman grapples with her state of being? And that state of being is always grounded in the body of the woman, which is in fact the common denominator of her art. Whether she's dealing with ecology, whether she's dealing with psychiatry and psychology, always it comes back to the body of the woman. So this is an artist who is grounded in what is most concrete of the feminine condition, and that is the woman's body. She does it through drawing, but she does it through photography as well. And she does it through sculpture, as intimated here. At the same time, Lucenac is asking herself, and by implication, asking us, the viewers, what is our relationship to Mother Nature? Is nature, by definition, feminine, as indicated in these works? This is entitled The Birth of Venus. So is there an equivalency between the birth of women and the birth of nature? The relationship between the feminine condition and planet Earth? In many respects, not unlike David Attenborough, she wants us to face where are we now in relationship to planet Earth. And ironically, where we are relates cogently to where we are with the condition of women. The artist, drawer, I dare say draftsman, Olivier Bonnet leads us into a different aesthetic, first chronologically speaking. He draws his inspiration from the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, and he goes even as far as the 1960s. It is quite clear that for him, the Art Deco movement prior to World War II is a source of inspiration. Photography informs all that he does. Very often, he draws his inspiration from photographic images or from magazines or from maps. And we can see in his art the extent to which he, as a man, grapples with the condition of women. Whether it be in a photo very well known by Helmut Newton, which he has totally, meticulously, painstakingly recreated through his drawing. None of this is digitalized. None of this is AI. None of this is virtual reality. I've been in his studio. I've seen him do it with his magnifying glass, with his pencils, how he gives such attention to every single detail and recreates it in living color, so that the photograph is not an ephemeral image, but a permanent state of the moment. How ironic. How could Olivier Bonnet take one moment in time and render it permanent? Well, he does it through the art of drawing, whether it be pastel, whether it be through, and this is what's amazing. We think of the great fashion photographers like Richard Avedon. Olivier Bonnet gets it. They're not just fashion photographers, they are contemporary artists through fashion, so that fabric, fishnet, they're all part of the package that he brings through his art. And again, he looks back only to look to the future, like the Greek god Janus, who faced both forward and backward and brought them both together in the synergy that is the art of Olivier Bonnet. The artist-photographer Claude Gauthier, in effect, turns on its head the paradigm known in photography, in contemporary art, of the male gaze. Because look what happens in his work. There is the male gaze hiding, effacing itself. There is the male gaze that is looking out in wonderment. And there is the male gaze in ultimate vulnerability. This is not the dominant male. This is not the alpha male. This is the male in reflection. It is most intriguing to me that these scenes, and they are staged poses on the part of Claude Gauthier, it's almost as though he's asking us to rethink how men are, how men perceive themselves. In fact, are they hiding behind masks? Is that what men do? Masks of masculinity? Are men in reflection? Are men really developing themselves? There is something theatrical, dramatic about the male in the photography of Claude Gauthier. So that male models, they are not passive, but they are not aggressive. This is the opposite of the passive-aggressive male. This is the male who is in reflection, in contemplation, if not in meditation. The male here is an actor, but not a director. Very interesting that this photographer, by putting these different male models who come from around the world that he works with, how he puts them in positions where they must search for their own identity. What does it mean to be a man? Asian, African, white, black, covered, unveiled? We are seeing the raw male in the photography of Claude Gauthier. The artist-painter Eric Niemenen brings us back to the very origins of Western art, in the human figure, albeit informed by Greco-Roman mythology, the notion of the gods, the notion of the demigods, such as Hercules, of the relationship between humans and gods, which we see very well in his sketches here, whether in ink or in pencil. At the same time, he dialogues with the entire infrastructure of antiquity. Its built environment informs him as an artistic inspiration. It's particularly interesting for me that a relatively young artist such as Eric Niemenen has gravitated not to abstraction, which is quite popular, but he has gone back to the very roots of Western art through figurative art, through the representation of the human body. So he's beginning again. He's renewing this art form, this genre of art through the human figure, but a human figure that is bigger than life because it's grounded in Greco-Roman mythology, the notion of the relationship between gods and humans. And when we look at his most recent paintings, it's ironic, almost like the U2 song, With or Without You. Are they human or are they divine? Does Eric Niemenen mean by this that ultimately human beings are divine? That there is something sacred about humanity, about human beings? In fact, there's something sacred about their bodies, because they have become the source of inspiration for him. Here we see the bodies intermingled, interlaced. They are amorphous. They are anonymous. We don't know their faces. Thereby he's telling us what means the most to him is the form, is the figure, is the corporality of the human condition. And as we see throughout here, again and again, there seems to be an implicit struggle among human beings. Are they grappling with the gods? The artist-painter Sunja Park is of a generation of Korean women artists who bring so much to bear in their creative vision and in their artistic development. Born as she was in the wake of World War II, of the occupation by the Japanese Imperial Army, which readily availed themselves of Korean women as comfort women, essentially having to deal with the legacy of when women's bodies in Korea were a commodity. When we look at her art,
We see. Yes.
Vaguely the form of a woman. But this woman is ill-defined. This woman is
Faceless.
This woman is
Anonymous.
This woman
World.
has been turned upside down. And that's exactly what we see in this work as well. Are women only bodies, different colored bodies? They are without heads, without intelligence, without identity, without faces? Is this how they must negotiate their womanhood in a topsy-turvy world of the Second World War, to say nothing of what followed immediately thereafter, the Korean War, which divided their own country, their culture, their heritage, ripped in two? It's no surprise then that in the work of Soon-Ja Park, we see the psychological depths, indeed the alienation, the isolation of a woman who dreams of peace, but who must live with the reality of what's happening on earth. And so these women, and that what's very important is the sisterhood of women, the work of Soon-Ja Park. The balls, albeit with many colors that you see in her work, are they playful or are they burdens? Does she reference thereby the burden that every
one
must carry in her culture of her generation? The artist Anushka Gravel-Golushko is an artist who has intrigued me for years, primarily because her imagination knows no boundary. Indeed, I'd say she's a fearless artist. She has presented a man bigger than life. What's more, a naked man. And as though that were not enough, she pushes the envelope and presents a man in sexual arousal. This is a gutsy artist. An artist who's ready to take reality, including the sex life of a male human being, and render it a work of beauty, of imagination, where everything is possible. And rather than repelling us, disgusting us, making us feel that something is dirty, something is wrong about male desire, about male sexuality, about a man's arousal, she has made a work of art out of this. It's an incredible challenge for an artist to accept, and especially a woman artist. I'm reminded of Marvin Gaye's really, how would I put it? He had a song that went beyond everything one had recorded or one dared say in popular music at the time. And that song was Sexual Healing. Is this Anushka Gravel-Golushko's visual art version of sexual healing? as Marvin Gaye would sing? How dare she tackle this subject that is taboo to this day in 2025? But that is the touchstone of a true artist. Nothing is off limits. Nothing is out of bounds. That is the art of Anushka Gravel-Galushko. The Korean artist Won Chi Kim, W-O-N, and then C-H dot, and then K-I-M, is a professional architect as well as a visual artist, which reminds us of the relationship between contemporary art and architecture. I immediately think of Le Corbusier, an incredible architect of the 20th century who was equally a remarkable artist of his day and age. So in some respects, this is the quest, the endeavor, the project that Kim has given himself to create a synergy between contemporary art and architecture. And what is architecture? At its best, it is art with a capital A. And that's what we see in his work. Yes, he's creating, not recreating, because this is all new. This is coming out of his imagination, out of his mind, and it is based on the human body. In fact, on human sexuality, whether female or male. We see very clearly affirming male genitalia as a paradigm for architecture and indeed for contemporary art. Or here, female genitalia as the basis, the grounds of architecture and female art. And in this work, Kim, he breaks all the barriers and he brings together male and female sexuality in a new world vision. It's almost as though, in the best sense of the word, not unlike George Orwell, Kim is presenting us through his art and architecture a brave new world. And that's what we see here. This is a cosmological vision, but not based on outer space, based on human sexuality. In both of these structures, and that is what distinguishes the art of Mr. Kim. His art is always about structure. It's about building blocks of lines and of colors. And it makes us think of a modern architect, Canadian in fact, Frank Gehry, and how he, who is the architect of the Bilbao Museum in Spain, he married contemporary art and architecture through new design, through new forms, through new figures. And the forms and figures and the designs of Won Chi Kim are those of the human body, female and male sexuality. The work of the artist-painter José Saint-Amand reminds us of an ancient human tradition of tattoos. In fact, what we know from Africa or Polynesia and elsewhere of body art, here rejuvenated, in fact brought up to date through her paintings of models who are tattooed. In effect, José Saint-Amand realizes that the human skin can be just as much a canvas as linen or cotton, just as much the basis of painting as wood or any other material form. so that her canvas is the human body, which goes hand in hand with the exhibition, The Body in Question, ? Because she is realizing all the artistic potential of human skin, of the human body. At the same time, she's documenting a trend that has become part and parcel of contemporary art, and that's namely tattooing, or in this case, of skateboards, which have become the new canvases of painting. Through her art, I question, is the human body most beautiful in its pristine form without any tattoos? Or are human beings actually adding to the beauty by tattoos? So this becomes a question of, is this value added tattoos? Is this in a way bringing out, realizing the full potential of the human body and in fact of human skin? Does it permit us to reconfigure, to rethink, or to question the human condition? When we see the body as an art form in and of itself, we get back to the basics of our definition of beauty, which in philosophy is called aesthetics. And José Saint-Amand is challenging our sense of beauty and, in fact, our definition of aesthetics. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on this magic carpet ride of the group exhibition, The Body in Question, big question mark, at the gallery ÉCLATS, ECLATS 521 Contemporary Art in Montreal on 372 Sainte-Catherine Street West in what's commonly known as the BELGO Building. In fact, the exhibition is open every day, including weekends, including holidays. It's free, open to the public. In fact, I particularly want to invite you to come in person and see, as Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber would say in his musical, The Phantom of the Opera. What is the theme of this exhibition with respect to the human body? Open up your mind and let your fantasies unwind.